Thank you, Dr. Tim. Apologies for being a little late.
No problem. You're right on time. You're welcome and deserving. Have a wonderful show.
Thank you. Blessings. So welcome, everybody, to the second hour of Mindshifters Radio, and today is Tuesday, April the 4th, 2023, and our calling number is 563-999-3581, and press 1, and that puts you in the queue to talk to us. We'd love to hear your comments and questions, because that makes this your show. Things are really busy here. We're preparing for Dad's ceremony tomorrow, and Michael's going to be actually the speaker and the presenter, and people have been delivering food all day today, so it's been a little bit busy. But just hold us in the space. We will do a pre-recorded show celebrating my dad going on to the next place. Anyway, if you have a question or a comment and you're on the switchboard, there's nobody waiting, press 1, and you are first in line, and we'd love to hear from you. Michael's working on a new article, and so that'll be going out in a newsletter sometime. This week's a little bit, like I said, other things going on, so I'm not sure when that's going to happen, but we're working on it. And we appreciate you holding the space for us. It's been a little challenging time, but we are moving forward. And let me see if he's having technical challenges again today. I know yesterday he had a little trouble getting on the switchboard. But let's see what's happening on that end. Are you in? Okay. So I'll find something to talk about until he gets on. One of the things he's working on is the Lord's Prayer. And I had asked him if he would share that also today on the show. So I think he's finalizing that part. But anyway, the weather has been absolutely wild. We go from rain and windstorm that just totally tore up a bunch of stuff out of the garden. And then today it's full, going up to 81 degrees. Tomorrow it's going up to 84 degrees. It's like, I think we skipped just from winter into blustery rain into summer. So we will probably start working on the garden after all of this is over and getting things moving in that direction. I checked the emails to see if I'd gotten any more comments. I read the one yesterday where the person was just thankful for the information that they got. Susan says I'll turn on her microphone. She just sent me a text. Yeah, since your hand was already up the first time, Susan, I didn't know that. I didn't see it flicker. Usually it'll flicker.
Yeah.
But
I flickered
anyway, welcome.
Yeah. Well, Jeanie, I just wanted to ask you, it's a major boulders in the deep psyche that move when you lose a parent or anybody you've been with your whole life. And I wondered how you seem great. And I know his passing was probably, in some ways a blessing, but how do you feel?
I have my ups and downs. Like, since you asked me, I'm going to cry. But it was awesome being with him, and one of the verses, and it's amazing how the world just gives you confirmation of things.
Yeah.
We had talked about, being with Dad when he actually sat up in bed and opened his eyes before he passed, and I said, I really felt like he had gone into glory even before his body let go. And so I thought of the scripture verse that talks about to be absent from the body, to be present with the Lord. And I said he was actually present with the Lord before he left his body, but we were talking about using that during the service. And Michael got a call last night from, I think she's a doctor, she's a healer anyway, from out west. And during their conversation, actually talking about the work and talking about the abbots and talking about different things, and she said, to be absent from the body, to be present with the Lord. It's like, wow.
Wow. Synchronicity.
Yeah.
And,
yep.
And
that's a scripture quote that I'd never particularly, remember thinking about or quoting, or, it's just not one that was in my memory. And the route that this woman had to take, she heard somebody do a presentation. She went and did some research on that presentation, found one of my videos, watched that video, and then went to the website and got a phone number and called us, or emailed us and then called us. And literally, when we were driving back home, we had gone out for dinner last night. We have a Monday night. Our cheap date night is a $10 pizza at Mellow Mushroom, and it's about 3 miles away. We're driving back, and we were talking about that quote, and I said, it's one I've just never really thought about. And now, we've lived it like full blast, and literally an hour and a half later, this woman just out of the blue brings that quote up. It's just amazing. And I know for me, the fact that Dad's gone and the fact that we were there as part of it, when I think of it, it's absolutely joyful. And, when I think about, like last night, we were going to go to Kroger, and usually we'd go to see him and go to Kroger because it's on the other side of town. It's like, oh, we don't have a reason to go over to that side of town anymore. And there's that missing aspect of that, for me, that human aspect of it. But on the other side, it's just, wow. Just, that he allowed us to be there, and it's just, wow.
Yeah.
And he's free.
Mm. Well, I was asking Jeanie how she's doing just in her private self about all this. Go ahead, Jeanie.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it will be different when this is over, but there's been so much to do. We had the trip already planned, so that was kind of a distraction, but and a joyful, wonderful one. But there's just so much to do, like preparing, making sure that everything's ready, and, like it's going to be in a family cemetery over on the farm. And so one of my cousins had said, that the grave wasn't dug yet, so it was like getting hold of the funeral homes here to make sure they had gotten hold of the funeral home there, and that, that was covered. Somebody's rattling. Anyway, making sure that was covered, and then trying to finalize, like Dad was in the service for 8 years, and so he gets military honors, and making sure the color guard was going to be there. And one of the things last night, I was doing some looking, because one of the things that they do is, they fire off. There's usually 7 men, and they fire off 3 rounds, so it's 21 gun salute or whatever they call it. And I was looking, and basically where that comes from, they're emptying their guns into the air. And when the Navy did it, they emptied their guns into the sea. And it was basically telling whoever is, on the quote-unquote other side, no, we're empty. We're vulnerable. We're not going to attack. We don't have any ammunition. We're here in peace. And so it's an honor of vulnerability, I guess, to the person who has deceased, to the veteran. That, there was no war.
I never knew that.
And so it gives it a sweeter meaning. It's not just about, war or whatever, or firing guns, or so it's a peaceful honor thing. So it's just been so busy trying to get all that, and then my niece came in this morning and her family, and my brother and all of his family are coming through about 3:00, and so the church and all these people are delivering food, and they're supposed to pick it up and take it on down to the farm so that it's already there for the people that are already there. And it's just like so much stuff to do just to get all the T's crossed, And so I think after it's over and we're back home and settled, I may feel differently, because then I'll actually breathe more.
Yeah.
I did treat myself this morning to a manicure pedicure, so
hey,
I did go out and do, so I took 2 hours.
She's taking care of herself.
Yeah.
That's good. Well,
thank you for asking.
It's amazing that you're doing the radio show. Thanks for doing it. I know you've taken some days off, and I've had to take days off too because of, weird things going on. So, but it's amazing that with all that's still going on for you, you're on the show. That's really nice.
It's an honor to be here.
And we had, as a family, we had written some things. We did it when Mom passed, and just on, he's their dad, he's their G-pop, or Papa, or G-pop, and their dad. And just some of the things that we recall of his life. And
yeah.
So I was finishing up that yesterday and kind of had a meltdown, but for the most part, I'm doing well.
Yeah. Well, we're all who are listening are loving whatever the phrase is. It's the Southern phrase. Oh, loving on you. In the North, we don't use that, but I like it. Loving on you. I guess I understood it right. I picture it doing
it. Yes.
Good. I picture we love on our pets. We go mush them and pat them and kiss them and maul them. It's a little bit close to what we're doing. Anyway, we're just waiting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
So,
and we appreciate it.
It's a lot you've been through. A lot. I love that you're posting pictures of him in his vigor. You know, we did that at hospice. We would post pictures of the dying people in there when they were vigorous and fine, the way we'll be in heaven, I imagine, so that we could find our way to those old bodies, through those old bodies, to who they really were. It helped a lot to have those pictures up by their bedsides.
Right. Yeah, we had there's actually a thing called a photo frame, and we had that in his room, and it would give, like all of my brothers and my nieces, nephews, the pass key to it, and so they can go online and upload photos. And
nice.
They would show up in his room, and the photo frame just rotates from picture to picture.
Oh, that's great. That's definitely an upgrade from when I worked at hospice.
Yeah. And that allowed everybody, to participate in, I can't be there, but, here's their family, here we are. And,
yeah.
Sometimes sad to know who they were, and sometimes they wouldn't.
It helps the doctors and nurses to realize the humanity, the personhood of that person who's so diminished by the time they're in those beds.
Well, the flare of life that came to him when he took his last breath, I mean, I was thinking this morning, Jeanie, and I couldn't quite pin it down, but it's somewhere between a year and maybe a year and a half since we've seen him sit up.
Oh, wow.
So he had to be sat up. He hasn't sat up in a year or a year and a half. And the instant before he took that last breath, he sat up by himself, just sat up, looked up to the left, and his eyes popped out. And, I mean, the energy in the room was just awesome. The strength in him was awesome. And
great.
And he took that last breath. Yeah. And, Jeanie, while you just mentioned the photo frame, we really need to make a note to get that out and take it with us, so we've got it at the farm when everybody's there. Hadn't thought of it, so I'm glad you mentioned it. Yeah. So we're breathing a lot.
I bet.
How about you, young lady? How are you doing?
I'm breathing too.
You said you've had to take some time out?
Yeah, well, I finally brought Tim on board to brainstorm about our house guest.
Right.
Because Tim and I had an interesting discussion. We were on a walk, and I said, I think about this person a lot. I think about Michael a lot, and I keep having to allow him to do what he's doing or not do what he's not doing, and wait and see, let things be. And I said, how is it for you? And he said, oh, yeah, I don't even think about it. And I said, if I didn't live in this house with you and him, would it be different? And he said, oh, yeah. I'd be doing what you're doing. I said, all right, then let's join forces here. I don't want to carry this myself. This is big. So I want you thinking about it too, if you don't mind. And that was Tim Hayes' suggestion. He said, why don't you ask him to join you in
Great idea.
doing whatever. Yeah. So we've come to a conclusion, and we probably will have some support. I'm waiting for a call from the Social Security Insurance gov people, because they really said we're withdrawing his funding if he's living with you. Well, the flip side of that is if he's working hard for us, he could stay here. That was the implication. So he did a little bit of gardening the other day. And I know that's because he's hoping that if he does enough, we'll invite him to stay. And the amount of enough for me would be much more than he's doing. He does maybe 10 or 15 minutes in the garden, and then he fills the bird feeders and he runs a vacuum over the main areas of the hallway. And it's been nice to have that, but it's definitely not an even exchange. I never made that deal with him. I just thought, we'll just keep you here, keep you warm and safe until winter is over. And I don't really to make him work a lot of jobs, cleaning bathrooms and things. I mean, I do those things myself because they feel, it doesn't feel right somehow. So anyway, so the deal is that Tim and I are going to find a way to have him leave within the month, but we haven't told him yet. And it'll be 7 months that he's been here by the end of April. And we're going on a trip, and I do have a house sitter coming to live here during that week. And I found that I didn't want to ask Michael to take care of the animals and be upstairs. And Tim doesn't want him to do that either. And I'm not sure what that's about. It may be a prejudice against people who are homeless. And I'm looking at that. There's so much learning going on here. But so we're really very much up in the air, and we haven't had any discussions, and we hardly see him. And I feel as if in some ways Tim and I have failed. We haven't invited him or tried to socialize him, but he just slips upstairs, quick, goes outside, walks his dog, quickly goes to the grocery store, brings in a few bags, goes right downstairs. We have a few words, but there's no reciprocity. And at the beginning, I would ask him about himself, and it was mainly recitations about all the gigs he had and how successful he was. And boy, I get that. He wanted to tell us that he's a successful person, a worthy human being in the cultural standards. I made money at one time and all this, but there's been no dialogue. There's been no curiosity on his part about who we are. And we're not going to sit him down and say, you need to know about us. So I find this all this is new and mind-boggling. So that's just a report. And I'd love to hear what you think about, are we missing something? Could we be doing something differently?
I'm just finishing a text to you.
Okay.
As I'm listening to what you're saying. And just some thoughts. And for me, what that would look like, it sounds like there's a party that'd like to demand some social interaction with him, but you're reticent to do that, and he's reticent to offer it. But if his SSI is conditional upon him doing a certain amount of work there, it would seem fair, if you're not using the space elsewise, to offer him literally a job, and you give him a list of tasks to do. And if he wants to do that, by doing so, he gets to stay there and he gets to maintain his SSI. And you can let go of he then becomes more, an acquaintance tenant where you can cancel all need for social interaction. His life is his and yours is yours. And, if the twain meet, nice. And if they don't, he's a tenant that's, working his way, paying his way for what you're offering him. He's maintaining his income and he doesn't have to go out and face that whole, what am I going to do getting back on the road again? Where am I going to live? How am I going to live?
Yeah,
it seems like that might be a solution.
Yeah, I don't want to do it.
No,
so I have to deal with
don't do it.
But why not? I mean, I'm questioning, in this day and age, we really need to help each other. The homelessness problem is horrendous. And, my grandson is regaling us because we don't give him more money than we're giving him, and he gets really ugly about it, and that's so disturbing. My work mainly is to stay
that's
balanced.
His work, not yours.
Yeah, but my work
that's
is
Jonathan's
to stay balanced.
Work, not yours.
That.
Yeah. I hear you.
I got
there's that story about there's that story about the person on the beach, and the starfish are washed up on the beach, and he's picking the starfish up and throwing it back in the ocean, and another person calls him, "What are you doing?" "Well, I'm saving these starfish." And he said, "Well, look how many millions of them are. You can't save them all. You can't make a difference." He said, "I just made a difference to that one's life."
Yeah, that's what I think about. We're not doing much, but this is something, and yet, we don't have a separate entrance for him, and so he has to come through, and maybe I can get comfortable with that. There's something that doesn't feel comfortable about this whole setup, and maybe, I don't know, Tim and I have put in a call to the Social Security person because I'm not sure if he could continue getting those checks if he continues living here. I think not, even if he's working here. I think she made an exception. So if that's cut off, then he has to stay here forever unless he gets really enterprising. And what we've seen is that whatever jobs, find a van and stuff, have dropped off to nothing. It appears that nothing is happening. And then I have to do wake-up sheets on getting impatient and thinking he should do this and he should do that. Well, what the heck?
Have you ever watched the video that I did for Avison Medical for their medical, one evening a month they do a medical conference for medical people, and I did a presentation on the sympathetic, parasympathetic. Have you ever listened to that?
Yeah, I've listened to part of it, and in different sections, and I have it up here. Yeah. No, you're talking about.
Well,
you talked about this before. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just that one of the aspects of sympathetic dominance, which means one is under fear, anger, hostility, or just general stress, is they move into sympathetic dominance. And it literally, one of the responses we talked about, the fawning, but the one just before fawning is freeze. That literally, the brain freezes. Literally, the spine is inactivated. And I mean, the person who freezes in front of an oncoming car, they didn't decide to commit suicide. Literally, it struck them so hard that their nervous system simply shut down, and they couldn't move. And so, from what I've, the little conversation that I've had with Michael and the things you've shared, I suspect that's probably where he lives a whole lot, especially if he thinks about, I've got to go out and make my way again.
I know.
And it's a tough place to recover from. The person who's in such depression they can't get out of bed, that's another expression of the same thing. That's another sympathetic dominance thing that just shuts the system down. Literally right down to blood flow being restricted to the areas of the brain and the nervous system that would allow one to take action.
So I guess I come back to what's Tim's and my responsibility here. What can we do besides just a total out-and-out rescue until we die or leave for a nursing home in our dotage or something?
Well, my offering would be, when you say I don't want to do it, if it's a matter of, well, we want our privacy and this is our home, then I think you have every right to make that choice. Or you would mention the other alternative is, well, maybe it's just a prejudice against homelessness, and if that's it, then it's an opportunity to do some forgiveness, an opportunity to do some inner work, and open a different kind of space with someone that maybe your cultural upbringing has been taught to exclude.
I do have a lot of judgments about somebody who isn't pulling their own weight, making an effort. And then I ask myself, what would it be like for me if I were in his shoes? And I yell back at myself and say, I wouldn't be in his shoes. I've been single before and I got jobs. There are lots of jobs out there. I would do this, I would do that.
Right.
But I'm not him and he's not me. I'm not staying in his shoes. So anyway, this is
someone
an
who has a nervous system that shuts down is, where the average person says, well, that's great. Well, why would anybody do that? It's not that it's a choice. It doesn't have anything to do with choice.
It is a choice. Yeah.
When you understand the nervous system and how a certain level of stress, it literally quits. Again, that person who's frozen in front of a car, it's going to cost them their lives. They didn't choose to kill themselves, but the nervous system caused such a level where the structure literally froze in place and resulted in their death. So in a sense, of course, everything that, every place that everybody is a result of choices they've made, or more correctly, decisions. Because many people have never made a choice in their lives. All they've made are decisions. Whatever's structured in the mind plays out and rotates within the mind. And I understand the challenge. I've watched thousands of people come through this work over the years who've made monumental leaps in their work, and then they come against that issue that leaves them in that frozen mode, and they turn away. And I've seen it take, in one case that comes to mind, it took 10 years for somebody to come back and say, what was that you said?
Yeah.
And went back to work again. Literally took them 10 years. So I certainly understand the, where you or I would say, well, but there's always a resource inside of me. But, unfortunately, some people are so loaded, there are no resources left inside of them. There just aren't. And it's unfortunate and difficult. And you and I would say, well, but you can reach out and do something. And yes, you and I could reach out and do something. But the person has no resources left. Can't do that.
Yeah. I guess I'm using the wrong word. I'm saying he won't do it. And you're saying he can't.
In the current circumstance, that would be my offering. I don't think he can. Just when you think about, you load a goal in your mind, and then whatever is resonated by that goal forms your perception. And I can imagine, just from your descriptions and my conversation with him and, the people I've worked with over the years, that when that goal is loaded in his mind, it just brings up such a flood of mental constructs that just can't be handled. Just no resource, no reserve left to deal with it.
Yeah.
And it's certainly an unfortunate place to be. So holding the space for you for guidance, and Tim. and for Michael to be able to come up with the resources that moves his life forward gently for him.
Thanks. All needed.
I had a situation back a few months ago with a homeless person that I accidentally met here in the neighborhood, and, support him with a little bit of money and transport him a couple of times. And there came a point where, it's like, okay, the message I got from him is, well, now it's your job to take care of me and make sure I survive. And it's like, well, I have one more thing I'm going to do. It's going to be 0 degrees for a week next week. I've bought a hotel for you, but no, it's not my responsibility. So once you've completed with that hotel, your life's back on your own again. I'm not going to handle that for you.
Well,
that it became that kind of an expectation. I hear you.
Well, that's true here too.
Well, that's, I think, where the conversation comes in, where people say, now I need to set boundaries. And I know that it's not exactly the same, but I know in cases I've worked with over the years with people who've had a child that has been ostensibly mentally ill, or perhaps really truly mentally ill, and their behaviors just became intolerable.
Yeah.
And I've shared with that person is working with me to do some work to process through and to deal with that. And it's like, well, there comes a point where you certainly have a right as a parent to say, so now we're going to stop what we're doing, and you're going to go off on your own and do what you need to do. And one of the things you're going to need to be aware of is, especially in one case that I'm thinking about, this child had threatened to kill themselves. And then the conversation with the parent was, and if you lay this law down, you need to be aware, and are you willing for that consequence to happen? And of course, it's different with one's own child than somebody that you've met, who's homeless out in the street. But that person did, go ahead and enforce that with the child, and the child ended up committing suicide. And it was tough. But that's one of the consequences of that sort of situation.
That's awful.
Yeah. Difficult. There are many, many difficult choices to make in life sometimes, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I hold the space for you to be centered and connected in love, and follow the prompts that come from that space in you. I mean, you're the only one that's there live in that situation that can really receive Ruka's guidance as to what live in this moment should my answer be, should my demeanor, my behavior be. So we hold the space for that to be on track.
Thanks.
And for Michael to also be ready to receive the results, the consequences that he sets up. So breathing with you.
I'm definitely breathing.
I bet you are. So anything else on your mind for today?
Oh, no. I mean, yes, but this is great. Thank you for giving it this much attention, Michael. Appreciate it.
Well, we're happy to offer all the attention that we can. That's what we're doing. That's what we're here for. And, as I've said many times before, I appreciate the level of intellect and commitment that you have to keep coming forward with questions that serve everybody.
Well, that's good if they do.
Because without the questions, we can't ever get to the answers. So.
Well, Dr. Tim has been coaching to stay centered with dealing with Jacob, who is mentally not well and gets mean, as I've told you.
Right.
And there are ever new iterations of this mode he's in. And
Is he in school now?
Yes, he's in school. He's filling out his taxes, and he's telling them that he has no income so that he can get financial help. And I don't understand the tax situation, but we pay for his tuition, his apartment, his car, his meal plan, his vet bills for his cat. And he's mad at us because we don't cover some other things. And he does have a job. He insists he's sober, but he doesn't sound sober. Right. And often people keep using and say they're not. He tells me he's in his AA and he's doing this and that. He's very, very angry with us not sending money when he asks for it. And he has a teacher that he talks to giving him $500 to take care of his cat, and then he bought a lot of cat toys and probably some weed. Confronting him, he goes into complete denial. That's none of your business, or he won't answer at all. But he's filling out his taxes as if there's no income. And I said, well, I think this is tax fraud, but I'll ask Tim. He's the lawyer in the house. And he said, well, everybody does it. Look at all these oligarchs who have billions of dollars and they cheat on their taxes. Suddenly he's gone over into a side that he himself has been objecting to terribly. And I don't try to reason with him because I can't. But again, back to the worksheets, back to trying to stay okay under attack like this, because the invitation is, you are a scumbag for not giving me money. So
well, I'll tell you honestly, if I were in that posture, I'd be saying, okay, I got it. I'm a scumbag, so I'll accept that. And there's no money. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's no money.
Well, he's like the son of your friend who he's threatened suicide, and maybe we should let that take its course if that's the way it's going to go. Oh yeah. There's my daughter in between. Anyway,
I hear you. That's again. I hear the difficulty of that, and what the alcoholic and drug addict. It's well known in the AA circles is they'll just literally wring everybody dry of every resource, financial, emotional, and otherwise. And when they are not getting another drop out of the wring that they're doing, they'll crank the energy up another level. And the bottom line of their behavior is deceit. That's just where they live until, and of course in AA circles, they say until somebody hits bottom, and bottom basically is when they've wrung everybody out to the point where everybody says, I quit, I'm not doing this anymore. And the longer it takes, the more difficult it is to make a comeback from it. The longer the habit of being able to wring everybody for everything they've got so that one doesn't have to be responsible for one's own life, the more difficult the life lessons become. At 3, the lesson is with the terrible 2s and the 3s is a tough one, but if the lesson's learned, then that life changes. And at 10, that lesson's more difficult, and at 15 it's more difficult, and at 20 and at 30, and it's a difficult one to get out of that deceitful mind, that step into truly doing one's work. And it sounds like he's pretty good at wringing you guys out.
Yeah, he is. Okay, Michael. Well, thanks for listening to that. That's just a sob story. Thanks for listening.
Well, and at the same time, I hear you willing to move to the level of clarity where everything that brings up in you, and maybe he's a fully realized conscious spiritual being that's just playing that so that Grandma gets to work through every self-condemning thought she's got. And he's certainly giving you many opportunities to move through those things and stand solid and grounded in the truth of who you are. And when you are in that truth, nothing can threaten it. Nothing, as the Course says, nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists.
Yeah.
But it happens. And it's difficult to watch somebody play life out like that. Especially when you think there's something you can do about it.
Yeah. Our idea with him was to pay for college and his apartment until he graduates, which is not for another year. And then he knows he's on his own after that. And I'm wondering if even doing that much is a mistake.
Well, if
Anyway,
the AA folks are correct that you have to hit your bottom, it prolongs his hitting his bottom for another year. And, that's a judgment call. And as you say, you've got your daughter in between, your daughter to consider. And I don't know, has she been wrung out enough that she says, I'm finished?
She's blocked calls from him. And he calls her all the names he can find: narcissistic, abusive, manipulative,
right,
self-centered.
Yeah, it's all everybody else's fault.
It's everything that I see him doing. He's blaming her and calling her names like that. She doesn't want to hear it.
Projection.
So she has blocked. Yeah.
Yeah, it's total projection. Paul was addressing that one 2,000 years ago. He said, beware you who judge another, for that in which you judge another, you have been guilty of practicing.
Mm-hmm.
He was bringing that to the world 2,000 years ago.
Good stuff. Oh, I had
For
a thought,
sure.
a Lenten thought. Jesus said many times, do not be afraid, be not afraid. And that's, I always thought of it as a sort of supportive thing to say and a comforting thing to say and maybe an admonishment, but it's a command. I don't know if it is, but if you are commanded to not be afraid, then you are really, it's your job to come away from fear and do all you can to not be afraid. And it's also permission. We don't have to be afraid. There's nothing to be afraid of. Anyway, that was just a thought.
Yeah, no, it's right on. Fear. I mean, why would someone who has spiritual knowledge say don't be afraid? Because they know that that's how people go into sympathetic dominance and literally destroy themselves.
Yeah.
That's what fear does. It is. In the ancient scriptures, they talked about it as a demon. Perfect love casts out fear. It's like casting out a demon.
Wow.
Which is, the destroyer. I was reading some stuff not too long ago about the Middle Eastern thoughts on alcohol, and it comes from a word alcohol, and I may not be pronouncing that correctly, which means a ghoul. That alcohol is a ghoul in Middle Eastern thought.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And when you start looking at how in our culture alcohol is promoted as, it's just, it's just one of those things. It's a social lubricant. It's okay. And, we have a special cabinet in our home where we keep that stuff just for our best friends and our parties and our closest relations. And then we feed them that poison, when one wakes up to, no, there's nothing but a poison here. This is not a social lubricant. We have been brainwashed by the alcohol producing industry. The same way as the brainwash is happening now with pot in the culture, and it's becoming legalized, and that's coming from the highest levels of the political system. People who, ruled at the highest levels are now the people who are promoting pot and are standing there raking in billions from it. we're in this nice little Baptist town where when Jeanie first moved here, they had blue laws. Nothing was even open. And now you can go down to the local store and buy all the pot you want.
Yeah.
You can grow it in your backyard. You can go over to the casino and blow millions. I mean, it's like, it's a ghoul. It takes over. And I can remember when I used to think it was just, well, it's just a thing in the culture because I'd never been educated as to what it really was.
Well, I thought it should be legalized so that people were not put in jail for having it, but I don't think that's an answer either.
Yeah, decriminalization has a play in it. Yes, the decriminalization as compared to legalization, they're two different things for sure.
Yes. Whoa.
Life is fraught with opportunities, isn't it?
It is. I don't always appreciate them, Michael.
I understand. I understand. Each invitation to the next layer of cleaning up our genes is an invitation into deeper and deeper, what's the word I'm looking for? Facing on a deeper level things that, for generations people have not wanted to face and not wanted to deal with because they're difficult choices to make.
Mm-hmm.
Difficult things to work through. I mean, you look at what every one of us is carrying around in our genes, and it's some tough stuff. Especially if we're working from the mind of perception. And there's, to me, where the benefit of forgiveness is, of being able to collapse perception and work from a different place than just from the constructs of the mind. Almost think the whole thing was set up to give us the opportunity to make the choice to go there.
Yeah.
Which I think it is. I think it is.
It is. I think it is.
Yeah. All right, young lady. Well, you have a blessed one. We cherish you.
Thank you. Wish me luck. I'm having a big molar taken out at 3:30.
Okay. And tomorrow around noon, we're going to be doing Dad's service. So if you just think about us around then and send love in our direction, that would be awesome.
Okay. Yeah. Have a wonderful time at that thing.
All right. Blessings.
Thanks. You too.
Okay. Well, Miss Jeanie, it's almost 10:02.
We got 11 minutes.
All right. Well, if you're out there in listener land, did that conversation bring anything up for you? If it did, let's talk about it. How can we support you? What's on your mind?
Maybe put a call out one more time for an intensive at Heartland and talk about that.
Okay. Yeah, we're looking at the, we were not going to do a season at Heartland because of the whole COVID thing. And then we had someone who inquired that actually wanted to use the center, which is something we'd never done before. And we moved in the direction of getting that all set up. And literally at the moment where they were to provide their final commitment and deposit to carry it forward, they dropped away. But based on that happening, we decided, well, if we're going to do that, then we'll open up and do a season at Heartland. And so we're kind of on the fence at this point, and it's a plan and a choice that we have not completed. It's been going on for a few weeks now, but circumstances have sort of kept that ball rolling without any finalization. It's going to take a fair bit of work to make that communication and such, to make that decision or make the choice as to whether or not we're going to go ahead with anything in Heartland this summer. And with having my former having passed away and having gone out to Kansas City to be with my son and his wife, and she and her passing, and then coming back and having Dad pass. And so that's sort of just, that ball's just been kind of rolling down the hill. And if you're interested in joining us, we'll be, once we complete the service tomorrow, that's one of the places we'll be turning our energy and our research. So if you're interested in joining us for a Food, Fun, Forgiveness, and Work program at Heartland this summer, or a 9-day intensive, then if you would drop Jeanie a note, JEANIE at WHYagain.org. You'd send her an email, again, JEANIE at WHYagain.org. Include your name and email address, or pardon me, phone number. Then if you're interested in doing something, that will help us to make the decision. Is there enough energy to move in the direction of doing something at this late date for the summer or not? Let us know. That would be appreciated. And we're in preparation for tomorrow's service with Dad out at the farm, the family farm. And so we're going to call it a day for today, and appreciate you joining us, and hold a space for you to have the best year yet of your eternal life. It is an awesome gift to give the world, and blessings.